There's been a lot in the news lately about how the promise of tech has turned out to be a scam. This article I was reading talked about how, how they promised us we should drop the cable and it'll be cheaper. And now people are wishing they had cable back. And whether it's software as a service, there's this whole notion that, man, tech makes these big promises and we never deliver it. And it's not just a tech issue, it's organizations in corporate America in general. So I am thrilled to have a guest to help us figure out why this is the case and wherever else she wants to go. I've got Amaya with me. Amaya, it is so good to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Amas, it is an honor and a delight to be here with you today, and I am fantastic. Thank you for asking.
So when you hear me say that there's been these failed promises of, corporations comes in, you know what, cut the cord, life is going to be great, and then we live through it. And it's not that they're intentionally lying, I don't think. There's some execution, then we end up in a completely different place. Does that surprise you?
No, I just laugh every time I hear someone say that, like they're surprised. Kind of like, oh, there's air out here. You're surprised? I don't know. Have you breathed lately? Like what?
I don't know you as you're an optimist to me. That sounds cynical. What explain how you've come to this place?
So that's such a great question, and you and I have had many debates, right? But I've come to this place from living through the what occurs like a drug-induced belief that tech alone is going to make human beings' lives better because they don't actually consider the human being in the equation. So that's where you hear my my disgust, I guess, for as a nice way to put it, because it has been over and over and over. Right. Where, that look, people are doing the best they can. I'm not saying they're being malicious, right? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but they're selling us a dream and delivering us, I don't know, a nightmare. They're delivering us things that don't interact with the reality of what happens on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think, look, you can't have a show now without talking about AI and that. And every time the CEO of Google opens his mouth, it says it's a bigger invention than fire and all of this. And again, these promises are being made. I do want to say, and I think you would agree with this, that there are these moments of when what I call technology has been transformative. I have a broader definition of technology, meaning I think when we invented the ability to write, fire, electricity, the air conditioning, right? Those things have been transformative. Right. And I guess I would then ask you then that, talk a little bit about why have we not, we've gotten Ubers lately and Airbnbs that are worse versions of hotels, and Ubers, you might argue, are worse versions of taxis. Why aren't we doing the fire thing? And there is promise that maybe this AI is that thing, the really life-changing thing, antibiotics, right? Those kinds of leaps forward. We don't get much of that anymore. Why do you think that's the case?
Oh, Mosh, you're treading on dangerous territory asking me that question. But listen, I agree with you, right? There has been massive disruption, right? Whether it's, think about Blockbuster. I actually found my Blockbuster card when I was moving a few months ago. Boy, did that take me down memory lane.
Well, what? You've just lost half of my audience, so don't go too far. Half of them don't even know what that is.
I'm just saying,
kids, it's the store where you go in and you get a movie.
Oh,
anyway,
man.
Go ahead.
You're so funny. Think about Amazon, right? And like you said, Uber, Lyft, all of those things. Look, there have been absolute altered states, right, of the way we live life, and some of them have been fantastic. Really fantastic, because if you are the monopoly, you don't have to care about your customer experience. You don't have, look, think about taxis in New York City before there was Uber. Okay. You put your life in your hands getting into that cab and you weren't really treated very well.
Right.
So having something that disrupts the status quo in the essence of making it better, more affordable, more widely accessible, I am all for that.
Right.
And separately, people get excited. I know some tech nerds. I know people that stand in line overnight for the latest iPhone and et cetera, right? They love the vision of being on the cutting edge. Nothing wrong with that. When you take out the consciousness of, is this good for humanity? How will it affect humanity? How will it affect the organization? How will it affect the customers? How do we go for a win-win? Okay, we're not getting rid of AI. We're not getting rid of tech. When you take that out, then there's a problem. Now, on the other hand, back to the question you're asking is, why haven't we seen more of this? I really sincerely believe that there is more technology that is available, health, medical, energy, et cetera, than we are aware of at this time. It just hasn't been brought out to the public for us to actually consume it because it is such a big disruptor of the status quo.
I want to ask you a more fundamental question, right? In that, if I think back to, iPhones, and again, these what I call transformative things. Why can't we, in general, deliver on transformation anymore? Whether that be digital transformation, what happened? Why can't we? By we, I mean organizations in general have just gotten worse at delivering transformation. What happened?
Yeah. So my not so humble opinion is that it is a fight between profits and the ability to actually deliver the transformation. If you think about, right, especially publicly traded companies, they are on a quarterly tithing, if you will, to Wall Street, right? Everything is in 3-month increments.
Right.
And if they're not making the profits, if the board of directors, if the shareholders, if the people they're in bed with have no patience, conscience, desire for true transformation, then, unfortunately, the CEO, the executives are in between a rock and a hard place. Deliver semi better and still keep the shareholders happy, or actually deliver true transformation, because in many cases that takes a little bit more time, and they're put in a tough place.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And folks, you're going to get to know Amaya. We will put her LinkedIn with the show notes so you can get to know her. But let's break things up a little bit. I get to know you a little bit. So I want to ask you a question. What life mysteries did you discover embarrassingly too late in life? Mine is I found out the wrestling wasn't real in college. I was a little too old to be figuring that out. What life mysteries did you find out too late?
Well, I don't know if it qualifies as a life mystery, but I found out that you have to have oil in your car on a regular basis unless you want to throw a rod. Yeah. I know I don't know if it's a girl thing. I don't know, but I
feel like
wait,
how did you learn this?
in it?
How did you learn?
Because my car threw a rod and it stopped. And when the guy came to look at it, he said, when's the last time you changed your oil? And I was like, am I supposed to change the oil? I thought once it was in, we were good. So that was very embarrassing. I think I probably made his month of the story of the dumb chick who didn't know she had to put oil in her car.
That's awesome. All right, let's go back to transformation. So I've come to lower my expectations when I think about transformational results for both people and for the org. I've just gotten to a place where it's like I found myself advising people to, lower expectations because I've just seen this fail too many times. Again, if you drill into the people and the org, what makes transformational change so hard?
Okay, so if you put aside the whole shareholder, let's just put that aside for a second. Let's say that's not in the picture.
Yep.
And listen, this may sound crazy to some people, but delivering transformation in your organization requires personal transformation of the leaders.
Okay.
Right? So because delivering transformation in the org, you go through everything from process systems, et cetera, but you also deal with human resistance. You also, and look, as humans, and this is a well-known fact, we don't like change. Yep. Right? There is fear there. There's the unknown there. We would prefer the known misery over the unknown beauty. It's just part of the human nature. Now, put that aside. On top of that, if your organization has a culture of leaders not being authentic, transparent, and listening and working with the people, you're going to get resistance. So as a leader, if you're not able to look at your own way of being as a leader and what you promote, what you allow within your execs, your leadership layers, you're not going to truly understand and deliver transformation, because first, we have to transform. We have to look at what is it going to take? What is the cost? What is the sacrifice? What are we asking people to do? And why should they do it? A paycheck is not enough these days.
Right. Yeah, I think about that, and in some ways I hear that, and that sounds completely foreign. You know, if you've been conditioned and grew up in corporate America, you just know that that's not the case at all. In fact, when leaders articulate why you're doing something, it's often about the metrics. We're going to save this money, we're going to sell this many widgets, and we're going to do this and that. You know, in your experience, talk about how you've seen this come to life. Have you seen this done well? And do you have examples of good and bad where you've seen leaders be able to tap into that the human side of it?
Yeah. Well, to your point, though, the why is the why, right? Yes, we want to make life easier, save money, make more money, set up for, a better technological growth, et cetera. The why is the why. Getting to the why is the transformation part. Now, I will tell you, I've seen it done horribly more times than I've seen it done well, but I have seen it done well.
Okay.
Now, my very first foray into corporate America, and I was so naive, and I could tell you stories, but nothing I want recorded, was working for Xerox. Now, this was a start back in the 80s, and they had just come through almost losing the company to the Japanese, right? And because one of the things they discovered is they needed employee involvement. They needed total quality management. They took on Kaizen, or continuous improvement. But there was a few years where nobody got raises, including the CEO, They took their money down. Okay. They actually walked the talk, and they put themselves in the same place as the rest of the people, and folks were good with it. They were good with not getting raises for a couple of years because their CEO, their managers, their executives, nobody got raises, and they took on a transformation of the company and an investment in a way of being and a culture that, to this day, there is not one company that I've worked with or for that can beat how they did this.
That is high praise. I want to expand that and say, I think you would agree with me on this, that most of our institutions tends to be reflective of the broader society, right? It's like sports tend to mirror society, work tends to mirror society. So let's turn to the source. Let's go to the general society as well, because I think to ask corporate America to fix all of society is a little bit foolhardy. But talk about how this shows up in our daily lives, even outside of work.
Yeah, no, that is such a delicious question. So back a few years, I'm not going to say how many, I took a cultural anthropology course that blew my mind. And so this cultural anthropology course talked about how you could get a sense for what the culture was about by the number of descriptions of their most prized experience. Let me say it like that. For example, Eskimos, or folks in the Antarctic, had hundreds of different words for snow and ice, because this is what they had to deal with. This is how they stayed alive. They had to understand it. They had to work with it. They built their homes from it, right? You get the picture.
Yep.
Guess what America's word was, or thing was, that had multiple words?
What was it?
Money.
Well, that is our God.
Right? So, I mean, if you now look, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with money. I love money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And our country was built on this is the dream. Come here, come with nothing. You can make a life, you can, et cetera, et cetera. It is the land of opportunity. Nothing wrong with that. And somewhere along the line, and hundreds of years ago, I don't know, we began to become enslaved to the actual narratives that were being delivered to us. And we began to lose our personal power of choice. We actually forgot we had a choice, and we figured we had to go along to get along. And so the corporations, look, I'm not faulting them. They are in a world in the United States, they're in a world where, cash is king, profitability. How do you keep up with the other guy if you don't outsource your stuff and if you don't take shortcuts here and et cetera, et cetera? So it's definitely not an organizational space, but it is a space of there are narratives out here that we as humans have forgotten that we have a choice. We have an innate ability to understand what resonates as truth, what does not, and what we want to participate in. And we've given up our power as individuals. Now, there's plenty through history of groups of individuals that have stood up and, said no, and it's made a difference, and et cetera. But the everyday, day-to-day people kind of go through life asleep because what they're trying to do is take care of their family, survive, grow in their career, figure things out. It's part of the most complex experience in life. And our corporations are a reflection of what we're going through as individuals.
So if I'm to, man, you usually cheer me up when I talk to you, not today, because it sounds like it starts in society, right? We've kind of lost focus, and money is no longer a tool. It's now the thing that we then worship, and it's the center of our life. It makes the same society then produces organizations that thinks in terms of every 3 months, and on and on. And then this then creates this organizational and societal gunk, if you will, where things can never truly transform because, one of the best books I've read and reread is, all problems are interpersonal problems, right? All problems comes down to the individual.
Yes.
So that then doesn't move. I could hear people listening to this thinking to themselves, yeah, so what? I mean, I got an iPhone. So we have organizational dysfunction. And there's dysfunction everywhere. There's gone, but we're making it by. We're going on. I'll pose that question to you.
Yeah.
Which is, so what?
Well, look, and I don't mean to depress you, okay? Because there are a lot of people waking up to this. That's the beauty. Now, that's also why there's lots of discord happening. But yeah, look, it could be so what? I wish I could be a so whatter because my life would be easier. Okay, it would. I wouldn't always be looking to evolve and transform and blah, blah. And there's going to be a portion that it's just like, look, so what? Fine. But here's the thing, and maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. I have experienced what it's like to work within a company that is that provides the space, right? Because look, you can provide a space. The company really is not required to make people happy. First of all, number one, it's impossible. Number two, it would just be dumb. But you can't do it. But you can provide a space for people to choose to step into their best selves. Because I've worked for a company, worked for them for 14 years. So it wasn't a fly-by-night thing, depending on who I was working for. It was the culture.
Right.
I know what's possible. I know what happens when you work somewhere, that when you leave at the end of the day, your soul has not been sucked out of your nostrils to try to survive, that you actually are more uplifted about who you are and what's possible that you can do, that you then take home to your family, you then take home to your community, to your churches, your religious institutions, wherever you go, that thing spreads. And so because I've worked for a company, a large Fortune 100 company, that has put that in place, I know what's possible. I know the difference it makes when you feel good about yourself as a human, day in and day out. It alters your life. And it's possible without spending billions of dollars. All it takes is a willingness to figure it out and to make it happen. And life alters for everyone.
Wow. I hear that. And number one, it makes me want to go get a time machine and go work for that organization back when.
Yeah.
But then it gives me hope because it makes me want to then ask you then that, okay, there are clearly some elements of this that then work. So what could we do? So if I made you queen of the world today and queen of corporate America, what have you, where would you start? How do you get us to a place where humans are in that mindset, which then again allows us to do big, complicated, transformative things?
Oh man. Well, like there's a lot of things, right? But
Right.
the first thing, one of the biggest things that I've noticed that differed from Xerox, from this company that I worked for, is, you know, companies talk about employee motivation and satisfaction, and some of them do surveys, some of them don't. But even the ones that do the surveys, they do not value the results of the survey the same way they value profitability or customer satisfaction, right? It's almost as a nice to do. It's a, well, we'll do this and kind of, you know, see where it goes. At this company, Xerox, if you got a score lower than, I think, 68, 70, HR would descend on you like SWAT. And you did not, I mean, you had to either figure it out, fix it, of course, with their coaching, with their help, or you were removed. You were not allowed to manage the souls that were in your care if you did not know how to create an environment where people could be their best self and deliver results. It was that serious. They did not play around, but they also spent a lot of time and effort into developing people to be leaders of people. You couldn't even apply for a management position unless you passed through a gauntlet of deliverables, panel interviews, that they said, okay, you're ready to manage people. You can now apply for jobs. You couldn't even apply because they wanted to make sure that the people that were in your hands were in good hands, because that would mean the company was going to be in good hands.
I think that is a very simple place for folks to start, right? It's like just listen to employees and your stakeholders with the intentions of actually making a difference for them individually. I want to break things up and ask you a question I like to ask my guest, which is, I made a purchase of a neti pot. For those of you who suffer from allergies, you know what that is. And it cost me about $15 when I bought this thing. And it was a life-changing purchase for me. Like, now, listen, it took me a while because on the box of this neti pot, then you've got this young lady who is gracefully just pouring the thing in, and it's coming out the other end. Me, I feel like I'm waterboarding myself every time I treat this. But for someone who suffers from allergies, it's been life-changing for me. It's when things get really bad, I do that, and it costs me. So I like to ask you, what is a purchase you've made that's under $50 that you will consider life-changing?
Man, $50. Okay. Well, so, you know, the first thing I think about are particular books, right? That made a life-altering difference at the time that I read them. And there was two. And the first one was more professional related. It was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I was way, way early in my career, right? I was supervising, but not directly managing people. And I was just hungry for, how do you, right, be a good leader? How do you make a difference? And that book is timeless. Anybody that I mentor that's just starting out, I tell them to read this particular book, because the principles can be utilized with everything in life. And it's simple and it's great and it's just very clear to the point, right? The other book that made a difference personally for me when I was in one of my most darkest times, and this is, you guys, this is non-religious, this is nothing like that, but it's a book called Conversations with God, an Uncommon Dialogue. And it really, at the time, like I said, it was one of the darkest times in my personal life. It really set me on the path to understanding that the answers are within, not without. And I've been getting the answers and I hadn't been listening. And so it made a huge difference.
That's awesome. I want to wrap up. I'm running out of time. But before I go, I will be remiss to ask you about this as someone who focuses on this, that many of our listeners are involved in transformative things in their personal lives and in their careers, whether that's in the customer experience, operations, what have you. What would be your one piece of advice to leaders as you are thinking about this transformative thing? What is the one thing you think they are overlooking that you would encourage people to look at?
Oh, wow. Okay. Don't overlook win-win.
Okay.
Don't sacrifice. Don't accept that there has to be a sacrifice. Actually stand for a win-win. Now, that might mean you got to dig. That might mean you have to bring other people in to figure it out. That might mean a lot of things, but don't take the quick road out when you can have the powerful road that will make a difference long lasting.
Wow. Wow. That is one heck of a quote. So on our way out, Amaya, we do this thing on the show where I ask you to share what made you laugh, a quote, something you read that improved your life in this past week. For me, I've read this book probably 10 times, and it's called The Courage to Be Disliked, which is really more as opposed to a Sigmund Freud philosophy, more of an Adler philosophy. And anyway, reading that book again gets me back in the, as you know, I study Stoicism, this whole focus on your actions, your things, and the other party is going to do what they do. You got to live your life in a principled way. What about you? What thing made you laugh or educated you in this past week?
Well, so I went to go see The Equalizer 3.
And, okay.
I mean, I'm a fan for life, right? Denzel and it's a lot of his movies. But here's what I will say. And this look, dude is getting older, right? He's getting up there in years, but I promise I'm not gonna do a spoiler on the movie, but he still did his thing. Right. But there was a different context to how he did it that will touch your heart and soul.
Okay, I might go see that. Amaya, this has been a lot of fun. I've been wanting to have you on the show. I am so glad you're on. We're going to post your information so folks can find you. Lots of quotes you've given us here, and I've learned a lot. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Amas. It's been an honor and a privilege always to be with you.
And until next time, take care of yourselves, and if you can, each other. Talk soon. You've been listening to an Amos Talks production.